In this video, we're going to learn how to set up our watercolor paper. The first thing I did was to fold it in half. Your name is going to go on it and your class period. Next, I'm going to open it back up, and where I folded the crease, I drew a line, and then I wrote watercolor techniques, and on the left, color schemes, and I drew a line across. Once you've written the title on both sides of the paper, you are going to then find the middle point and draw a vertical line down for both sides. Next, we are going to be labeling some things. So under the watercolor technique, we're going to call it the flat wash. And then we'll call this side wet on wet. And then I'm going to draw another line down. Eventually we're going to be labeling this, but I'm just focusing on the watercolor techniques first. This will be like part 2 when we get to the next project. Now, the next one, I'm going to kind of skip some lines down. So there should be 4 sections. So I'm going to say about right here. And we're going to label this as wet on dry. And this one's called graded wash. And then you're going to draw another line. Okay. The next one is going to be called dry brush. And then we have one called rubbing alcohol. And then same thing, I'm going to draw a line. Another one right above it. And then finally, plastic wrap. And then with one called practice. And draw a line across. I'm going to just adjust this line since it was a little bit curved. There we go. So now that you have this label, this is the one we're going to focus on. The next one over in color scheme, you can go ahead and label these, but we're going to revisit this another time. This one's going to be monochromatic. This one's analogous, warm. Then we have analogous, but this one's cool. This one's gonna be complementary. We have split complementary. Triadic. Quadratic. And then we have tetradic. And that is all that you need to write to prep for our watercolor technique practice. We're going to start on the left. Now, how do you clean your palette if it's dirty? So we can see one that it's a lot cleaner, and then we have one that needs some work. So here's how you clean them. In your tray, right? There should be 2 of these watercolor palettes. At the end of the period, you should have both of these cleaned out. So you're working with your A and B partner. This one's the red group. So they're responsible for making sure that they put it back appropriately. So to clean it, all you need is a damp paper towel that's not super soaked. And you just have to kind of wipe it out. And notice that the ink is coming off. And then you can always dry it with a dry paper towel. So that is how you clean it. Now, the materials you're going to need is your painting paper. You're going to need your paintbrush, which your teacher will provide to you. It does not go in the palette. It comes back here so the brushes don't get ruined. You're also going to need 2 of these trays per table group. So if you, in your group, if there's a group of 2, you only grab 1 tray. If there's a group of 1, you're still going to grab both of the trays. You never want to take the palette by itself. It should always be in the tray, so we don't lose materials, and that way it's easy to transport it back, because since you're seated in the group settings, right, we have to work together to get everything cleaned up. So this is what you should have. You should have 1 of these or 2 of these if you have a group of 4. And one of them will be for specifically for clean water, and the other one is for rinsing out your paintbrush. So the reason why we want to have the clean water so we can scoop it to our palette. And once you have your tray for your table group, it doesn't have to be stuck to the tray. You can take it out on your table, but at the end of the period, it needs to be cleaned and it needs to be put back on the tray, and one person will bring it back to the cabinets. So I'm going to put my tray aside and I'm going to bring in my painting paper. So the first one we're going to start with is flat wash. And something to note about the paintbrush, we're using a round brush, which is very versatile for detail and it's great for watercolor. So the first thing you do is you're going to scoop the water onto the palette. And then once your paintbrush is wet, you're going to take a color of your choice. So I'm going to choose this color. And I'm going to lightly brush it on. You never want to dig it in, because that will destroy the brushes and destroy the watercolor palette. Watercolor goes a long way. It's meant to be transparent. And you're going to keep adding it in. If for some reason you need more of the wash, go ahead and rinse your brush out. So I'm going to use this one for rinsing my brush out, and this one's the clean water. So I'm going to scoop more clean water. And now that my brush is clean, I'm going to go back and lightly brush it and add it. Now, for some reason, if you forgot to clean your brush and you started mixing it, a way to clean it would be, first of all, clean out your brush, dry it with a paper towel, and you're going to see if you can scoop some of the paint away, clean it, dry it, and that's how you clean that color, in case you accidentally mix it. Now onto the flat wash technique. Something to note is you want to find the bead whenever you're doing a flat wash. So let me give you an example. So let's start with flat wash. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find the bead and then drag the bead down. So now that I have a wash, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it just a few times. And the bead is what pulls down at the very end. You're going to take that bead and you're going to keep dragging it down until you get to the end. If you want to end your bead, you're going to quickly dry your brush and you're going to pick up the leftover liquid that's there, and that's a flat wash. If you let the pool of water kind of rest, you might get a back run, and then you'll see like what we call a watercolor bloom when it dries. So for the first one, now that we've practiced our watercolor bead, you know what it looks like, you're going to do it for this section. So I'm taking my brush kind of quickly, I'm finding the bead and I'm just quickly dragging it down to the end. So that's the first one. For wet on dry, you're going to do it similarly to flat wash. And then we're going to let that dry. And I'm going to dry my brush. For wet on wet, you're going to need to have 2 colors. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to dry it. I'm going to scoop clean water to create a wash. And since I did blue, I'm going to choose my secondary color, so I'm going to do green. And clean my brush. So for wet on wet, you want the colors to bleed together. So here, there's lots of examples of wet on wet. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and show you what wet on wet looks like. So 2 colors, and the goal is for it to bleed together. So I'm going to take my blue first. And I like to kind of scatter it. I'm going to quickly rinse out my brush. Take the green. I'm going to see if I can bleed those 2 colors together. Clean it. Something like that. So I'm not really brushing it back and forth. I'm just kind of applying it on the edge here. Clean. And then continue it. So I'm going to do the same thing for the wet on wet. So clean. And then apply the secondary color kind of in between it so that the colors kind of bleed together. That's wet on wet. For the next one, graded wash, you're gonna have to go from dark to light by adding water. So when it's graded, it means it's gradual. So it goes from dark and then it gets lighter as you go down. So it's similar to the flat wash technique, except it's instead of having it one solid color, it goes from that solid color and it gets kind of lighter as you go. So for this one, you're gonna have to create a wash. So I'm gonna clean out my brush. I'm gonna scoop the clean water, add some of the paint, and I'm gonna start at the top. So I'm gonna add quite a bit of the bead that flows. And then once I get to about here, where my bead becomes a little bit less, I'm gonna clean my brush, make sure I have some clean water, and I'm going to fade it out. And then once you see some of the bead, you're gonna clean out your brush, and then you're gonna fade it off. So it should be slowly, getting lighter as you go down. And then you can always go back. Clean your brush. And just kind of keep going. And you should have a gradual transition when it dries. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Clean out my brush. And kind of drag it out, clean my brush, and it should kind of slowly fade away. And that's graded wash.